Welcome to How to Share, a podcast that celebrates how we inspire others by sharing our stories. I'm Wynne, and in this episode, my co-host Vicki Atkinson and I are with author and educator Gloria Golec. We talk with acclaimed author and educator Gloria about her heartwarming new release, Southside Memories. This captivating book invites you on a journey through vivid snapshots of family, Polish immigrant heritage, and the vibrant streets of Chicago. With every page, Gloria masterfully reveals how cherished memories shaped her life and inspired her path. We uncover the power of storytelling as Gloria shares how writing helped her stay connected to her roots and loved ones. She generously reveals the secrets to starting and finishing a personal project that might seem daunting at first, making it accessible for anyone ready to share their own story. Southside Memories isn't just a memoir. It's a celebration of identity and resilience. Through Gloria's uplifting narrative, you'll learn how sharing your story can touch hearts and inspire others. This is a must listen for anyone who values heritage, family, and the transformative magic of storytelling. Don't miss your chance to be inspired. Fall in love with Southside Memories today. Hi, Gloria.
Hi.
Vicki and I are so excited to talk to you because we enjoyed your book, Southside Memories, immensely. Can you give us an elevator pitch for the book?
Sure. Well, I think it's the story of the American dream, and immigrants come to the United States and they can't really, they don't expect that much for themselves, but they really hope that their children and grandchildren will really succeed, really just top. And it's a story of hard work. And if you work hard, you can succeed. You can get what you want. It's a book about family and church, which together gives a very strong sense of place. And the strong sense of place leads to a very intense sense of belonging, which I was very fortunate to have. So I think it's a very personal story, but it has so many universalities in it. And, I feel very grateful to have had the experiences that I've had, and it's been a real joy to share it with other people.
Well, and we were talking before we hit record about how when you share your family like that, it becomes something that universally people can relate to.
Well, and I get to think about it all over again, and I get to think about it in a different way. I'm looking at it on paper, and it's funny. It should be the same as what it is in my head, but it's actually more intense on paper.
Right. Well, and when reading through it, it felt like looking through a photo album, which you kind of really make that feeling of flipping through memories palpable. How did you decide on that format and what memories to share?
I love when you said that, because I thought, yes, that's a perfect analogy for this. And the genesis of the book came because one day I decided, this was a very long time ago, that I wanted to write an essay about my grandmother. I wanted to write this homage to her, everything that she had done for me, Hands of Sojourn, 1955. And so I wrote this essay about my grandmother, and I really liked it. But as I was writing it, I thought, well, what about my Aunt Bernice? Look at all she did. I thought, I'm going to write one about my Aunt Bernice. So I'm writing about my Aunt Bernice, and I thought, gee, I'm kind of missing the elephant in the room, my parents. What about them? And so that's kind of how it got started. And so it's not chronological order.
Yeah.
not, it doesn't have the narrative arc because I really wanted character sketches. I wanted
Hmm.
something different.
Yeah.
So I could focus on a person without taking pieces of
Hmm.
them in chronology, which,
Yeah.
well, so that's how it got started. It got
Yeah.
started because I wanted to write an essay about my grandmother. And then I kept thinking of all the other people in my life who
Aw.
shaped me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how could I stop with just her?
Right.
But I think that's what we appreciate about it because it felt very almost as if we were with you as you were writing it. It felt like the flow
Hmm.
was coming from your heart. And I think you're doing a great service, Gloria, to other folks, that I know of that are curious about writing for wellness, saving family stories for posterity. It is so overwhelming, the contemplation of doing this.
Hmm.
And I think what you just said, just begin, and then, kind of follow your heart, and all the people that need to be written about, they'll arrive, they'll get their time, but just begin.
Anne Lamott has that great book, Bird by Bird.
Oh, so good. Yeah.
So write one bird story
Yeah.
and then ask yourself if you want to write another one. And I can almost guarantee you you're going to want to keep writing more. You're going to get so many more ideas
Hmm.
Yeah.
as you're writing the stories. We all have a story to tell. We all
Yeah.
have a story to tell. And I
Right.
think it's so important that we write them down. As I wrote this book, my father's sister, my Aunt Bernice, who was like a second mother to me, well, we called her the chatterbox. And we used to talk quite a bit. But do you know that she was the one who told me all of the stories about growing up with my dad? She was the one who told my dad, he never talked about any of it. It's over. He just,
Hmm.
and so I'm
Yeah.
so grateful that my Aunt Bernice talked about all of these things to me
Hmm.
because I wouldn't know any of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we need to write our story. We need to tell our stories, at
Hmm.
least
Yeah.
telling it.
Well, and
Right.
And
you do such a great job. I think one of the things that Wynne and I enjoyed the most was just as you said, it's the place and the time and the gender roles, how hard everyone worked, but
Hmm.
how hard the women in your family worked to do all the things, literally all the things. And then, like your mother, also working outside of the home, out of necessity. So you counterpoint that with like the
Hmm.
stoicism, of men at that time. And I think a lot of readers will identify with what you've written about your dad being, distant. Wasn't the storyteller. You didn't know what he was thinking. But yes, thank God for Aunt Bernice, right?
right. Well, and to go back to the women, for a very long time, until like a month ago, I resented my mother for making me come home, light the gas stove, put the food in the oven. And actually, as I was thinking about this book, I thought about my mother. And at first I thought, well, okay, she didn't have a crock pot. I mean,
Right.
we never ate out. And so what were her choices? But
Hmm.
I thought about it a little more carefully, as I have done with almost everything in this book, because now I'm reading it. I'm
Hmm.
reading it. And she was 4'11". She was tiny. She was like a little pit bull. I think she could have eaten bread and water for like a year and nothing would have happened to her. But my father was not physically as strong as my mother, and he had a very demanding job in a factory, standing for 8 or 10 hours
Yeah.
a day. Now, what I've learned in reading my own book is that I think my mother was so worried about my father
Mm.
sick. He had to have a really solid, heavy dinner when he came.
Hmm.
He was exhausted. And I think that because they had all seen people starve, they had all seen people lose their homes. I think that's
Right.
where my mother went,
Hmm.
went to that catastrophic end.
Yeah.
That if my father doesn't have a good dinner, he's going to get sick, he's going to lose his job, we're going to lose our home. And so I was able to forgive my mother for
Mm.
Hmm.
putting this, for putting,
Yeah.
and I'll never know her exact thoughts, but I think I've come to understand a lot of a lot of things that I
Yeah.
didn't feel I understood as much before I wrote the
Right.
book.
Right. Clarity through expression, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yes.
and you kind of come to that conclusion. You write about that. You say there are so many things she did wrong, but there were so many things she did right because in the end, she just kept hoping and doing.
Well, and it was just like you said a few minutes ago. She had to do everything. She was
Hmm.
the one. She was in charge of, she was the, leader of the orchestra here. She had to juggle all these different sides. I don't know how she did what she did when I look
Hmm.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, if you're doing 300 things, are all 300 going to come out correctly or well? No, because you're
Yeah.
doing so many things.
Right.
So that's how I see my mother. She had so much on her plate. And I was very competent. I was a very competent person. So here you are.
Mm-hmm.
You're stuck with this family to feed and you have to go to work. And what's the solution? Oh,
Yeah.
very competent daughter.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Well, your memories, I mean, the warmth of them comes shining through in your writing.
Mm-hmm.
Your grandmother, your Aunt Bernice, your father retyping your paper, they come through like a big hug. Did writing those keep those close for you?
Oh, made them closer,
Yeah.
Oh,
made them even more intense for me. I cried for some of this.
Hmm.
yeah.
And I appreciated them so much more from the point
Yeah.
of view of a much older person because everything these people did for me, they did it out of sacrifice. They didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Bernice worked at Western Electric on the assembly line, and she used to take me to the opera. I remember we went to the opera, we sat on the third floor. And we went to Kung's home and we went to the Prudential Building, the top of the rock. Now, this
Mm-hmm.
is my aunt doing all this on her salary from Western Electric. So
Mm-hmm.
this is a big sacrifice that she's making, but they all did everything out of sacrifice because there was nothing extra. There was
Hmm.
nothing,
Yeah.
it was a choice. It was a
Yeah.
choice. I'm going to do this for Gloria. I'm going to give this to Gloria.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in the moment, you're like, oh, wow, I'm, going here, I'm getting this. Gee, that's great. But then later you think, wow, this was a big decision.
Yeah.
This was
Yeah.
a decision because everything was a big decision.
Well,
Right.
and you write about just the what you were describing just now about the going places within Chicago and, as a young girl, how you had to master, the train, the L, the bus, make all those connections to get to those places because it wasn't just getting to, these beautiful venues and, kind of your cultural heart, I think, was being tended to as well. But you did such a great job of describing just the hardship of just getting around sometimes was not easy. Not everyone had a car.
No, not everyone had a car. And when we finally did get a car, my father had to take it to work. Well, my mother didn't drive for quite a while. But I'll tell you, my memories of Chicago bus drivers, they were the greatest. They were the greatest guys. I had to sit in the front seat and they would talk to me. They knew exactly where I was going. They knew
Aw,
where I had to get. I mean, my mother would always tell them she has to get off at such and such a place. But I mean,
yeah,
they were familiar with the place.
Hmm.
They
yeah.
and they were taking care of me.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
I never felt scared. I never felt worried. And of course, my grandmother's phone number, LA 38033. Anything happens, you call my grandmother. Yeah, you call grandma.
Yeah,
You have a
Yeah.
car,
Yeah.
but
yeah,
she would fix it.
Right.
So
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
and you write about your relationship with your grandmother. You said, I could do no wrong. Every child should know what this feels like before he or she grows up, no matter what. My grandmother was on my side.
yeah.
always,
Oh,
oh, I'll tell you, it was magic. That was
yeah.
just
Hmm.
absolutely magical to have somebody dote on me
Hmm.
and in that way. And also, I mean, she included me in all of her, and when I look back, I think, how did she manage all this? She included me in all of the daily tasks that she had to do.
Hmm.
And we all know it's easier to do it by yourself.
Hmm.
So,
True.
but when she would bake, she would ask me to help her roll out the dough, or I would put the clothes through the wringer washer in the washing machine. And of course, when the coal man came, we didn't know about carcinogens. He would dump it through a window on the outside in the basement in a chute, and then I would get to plant the coal.
Oh,
Very,
Nobody knew,
very
right?
vague. But my grandmother
Yeah,
included me in her life,
mhm.
yeah,
like on a minute-to-minute basis.
yeah. And it's
And
that was intense time with her that I think, I mean, she demonstrated that you had such value, as a little
Mhm.
girl, the fact that she would give you so much at that time, like you said, rather than just do it, herself, you were right there. But yeah, it is like a hug when we read it.
Yeah, yeah.
then as I got older and we would be at weddings, there's that one part in my book about how we were at this wedding and they had champagne coming from the fountains.
Oh, yes.
And, so I had never had champagne. Well, anyway, so my grandmother and I walked over to the fountain and she started to tell me about how it was the wedding. Well, this wedding was very elaborate. But she said,
And you
well,
were little. I mean, you were still a young girl at
I was
this
probably
point.
9 or
Yeah.
10.
Yeah.
But my grandmother, she had to preface it with, well, he's a rich dentist and you're going to be rich too someday. That was
Oh,
always, that was that word, you're going to be rich. But she took the champagne glass and she filled it from the fountain and she gave one to me and then she took one herself. And my mother came over and she was scolding my grandmother.
yeah.
Grandmother didn't think it was a big deal. And I mean, there are two ways to look at this. Why is my grandmother giving this child champagne? But in some ways, I was her peer.
Mm,
I mean,
Yeah.
doted on me, but I was her friend.
But also,
mhm.
I think there are cultural differences about, wine, at the table, depending upon, family and background. I think about some of my Italian, family. It wasn't this huge, mortal sin, to give a child a sip of this or that. Plus, your grandma was making a point. She was saying, dream big, Gloria. That's what I got from that, right? It
Right.
wasn't about the champagne.
She
Yeah.
always said she always said that to me. But it was like
Oh.
two girlfriends,
Mhm.
standing around in a bar,
Yeah, yeah,
champagne
Yeah.
about life.
Yeah.
Really, if you look back, I think that's kind of what it was for her.
Yeah.
right,
That's
right.
so good. And I have to ask too, when you were talking about your mom and your grandma, I was joking with you before we recorded. There's a beautiful, thread in your book about making baked potatoes. And I made some yesterday and I was thinking about you. But one of the questions I wanted to ask you, and I don't remember who, was it your mom or grandma who had the red tin recipe box? Whose was that?
My mother, I have
Your
it.
mother's. Oh, do you really? My grandma had one of those, and I don't know where it ended up. But when I read that, I got shivers all over. And then you mentioned making the lamb cake for Easter. That was like such a thing, right? And the molds and all of that. So there's a lot of, just richness, I think, about food and family in your story.
Well, and I
Yeah.
love that I have. So when my mother passed away, I found the red tin box, which of course I wanted. But I love looking at her recipes in her handwriting
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah.
and with the
Yeah.
lard signs on them, grease, and then maybe a little
Hmm.
whatever. It's such a treasure. It's just
Yeah.
such
Yeah.
a
Yeah,
and when I think
totally.
my mother was doing all this after she came home from work in the factory. I mean, I look at some of these recipes and I think, oh gee, I'm too tired to do
Mm.
this.
Right.
Yeah, and not just making dinner. I mean, you write in the book about, it was making the bread and the rolls and the desserts. And it wasn't, are you baking something, every day? It's what,
Mhm.
are you baking it? And yeah, it's a very different time. But I think although you're writing about your Polish family, I think the stories that you tell, so many of us will identify, regardless of our ancestry. It was women worked really hard. Let's just say that.
Yeah, yeah.
They
Well, and
did.
it's so easy in the book to see your trajectory to becoming an educator, your Polish roots, your first grade teacher, and maybe even a little bit of the kissing in the cloakroom, are all great waypoints. How do you think this book teaches other people to share their memories and their family and their roots?
Well, I think that it illuminates pivotal points in your life.
Mm-hmm.
It forces you to think about what did happen in your life. You know, when I look back on my first grade teacher, I remember my mother telling my father, I think she's 20 years old, which at the time seemed pretty old to me, but you know, when I came to school on day, I think it was day 2, and I told her I read the book Dick and Jane the previous night. She said, well, you don't know how to read. I remember I said, and I was, you know, a very quiet kid, but I sat down and I guess I must have been glaring at her all day because, you know, she called me up and she said, well, if you can read, then show me. Now we had like 50 kids in the room. So I read her the whole book, and I still remember her face. I still remember being in the front of that room. And she said, well, you're going to be my helper. I'll never forget that. I will never forget that day. You're going to be my helper. She let me sit in the front of the room. I could sit by her desk, and I loved it. I loved being out there, being in charge. And I always think that was it. That was it.
Yeah.
Well, and you write about that. I mean, first of all, I wasn't punished for being smarter, and it was one of those seemingly insignificant moments that became momentous. Looking back, what she lacked in experience, she made up for in kindness, and I have always felt that this was a pivotal moment in my life that led to a lifelong career as an educator. I mean, right?
Well, I think writing your own stories, you begin to see those with more clarity. You begin who shaped you and how they shaped you, and to appreciate who were there for you that maybe you didn't even realize.
Right.
So much.
Well, and I think that gratitude comes through so much when you wrote about, you know, the sewing lessons, the piano lessons, and looking back and realizing, you know, there wasn't a lot, you know, for your family to kind of like play around with money wise. The idea of like, you know, extra money was like that, you know, that doesn't exist. But I think that perspective of looking back, even though I think you understood at the time that, you know, the sewing lessons because you excelled. You know, I love the story that you tell about doing such a good job, you know, with your project that the teacher, Frida, right, kept, you know, kept complimenting you, but, you know, in a somewhat stoic German way, not a lot, but, you know, you knew you were doing a good job. And all of a sudden your mom and aunt wanted to take sewing lessons, but you're fixing their projects because I laughed out loud, you know? Yeah.
Oh, shameful.
Yeah, but that and, you know, the piano lessons and finding out later on that, you know, that was a big stretch financially. The piano was bought on installments and
I didn't know
so
if
good.
the lessons were a Polish thing, because it just seemed like if you could learn something, my parents were willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
Well, it's the American dream, as you know pointed out.
Mm-hmm.
They're supporting you in building up your talent base.
That my mother, she asked me many times, wouldn't you like to take singing lessons? And I was never interested. And so now as an adult, I think, why did I take singing lessons? That would have been great. But so even though she would agree to the lessons that I wanted to take, she was on her own thinking, what other lessons can she take? What other, how else can I make her better? Make her more talented.
Yeah, but seeing your potential, you know, just like your grandmother, right? And nurturing that. And clearly, you know, like Wynne said, all those experiences led to you being, I'm sure, super impactful for the students and colleagues that in your career that you had positive impact on. Yep.
Yeah,
And readers of your book. Yes.
Well,
absolutely.
thank you. That is just that means so much to me. Thank you.
Wow. It was a pleasure to read. Truly, we're excited for you. And we feel like we know you.
Yeah, we really do. And you did such a great job of sharing your photo album with us and bringing those memories to life, letting us see them from that perspective. And it's fun to hear about how that process played out for you as you wrote them.
Well, and I think that anybody who's thinking about doing this should just think about doing it piece by piece.
Mhm.
What's one story I want to tell? And then after you write that story, then gee, maybe there's another story, because that's really how I did this.
Yeah.
Because if you think about writing a book, it's pretty scary. It's pretty overwhelming.
Right.
And
Yeah.
but I didn't do it that way.
Mm.
I didn't have to scare myself.
Yeah. It's a good way to put it. It's a good way. Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about your great book, Southside Memories. We just enjoyed this conversation so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I really
Oh,
appreciate it.
our pleasure. All the best and great success.
Mhm.
Thank you. Thank you to Eckhart's Press.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening. Our music was written for us by the incredible duo of Jack Campora and Rob Koenig. For show notes and more great inspiration, see avitiva.com, avitiva.com.